Alright guys, we're going to start reviewing for our final, and this is just our part one of all the notes, so feel free to watch through this, try them on paper, and then go onto the EdSite worksheet and give that a shot. Remember to check your answers after each question when you're doing the EdSite one, and if you have any questions or you're getting something wrong and you're not sure why, take a picture of your work, email it to me, and I can definitely help you guys out. I want you guys doing well on this final, and I believe in you guys, so hopefully it won't be too bad. Okay, so we're going to kind of fly back all the way to the beginning of the year when we talked about solving equations. Okay, so we're starting off basic. Number one, we're going to solve for p. So remember, we always want to use inverse operations. So because that's a -2 next to that p, we got to do the opposite to get rid of it. So the inverse operation would be +2. So I'm going to add 2 on both sides, because remember it's split down where the equal sign is. So then these cancel out, which is what we wanted, and that gives us p equals, and then 8 plus 2 gives us 10. So our final answer is p equals 10. Okay, so nothing too crazy. We should this should come back to us pretty quickly. Okay, so for number 2, our goal is to solve for a, so we need to get rid of that -16. The inverse operation is to add, so +16 on both sides of the equal sign. So these cancel out, leaving me with just a, which is what we wanted. And then -9 plus 16 gets me 7. So a equals 7. Alright, going up to a little bit more challenging. So notice in this one there's a little fraction, but it's only dividing part of the letter. So we have to move that 3 first. So because it's a +3, the inverse is a -3. So we're going to subtract 3 on both sides, and 9 minus 3 gets us 6. So I've got m divided by 2 gets us 6. So if we're dividing, the opposite operation, or the inverse operation, is to multiply. So we're going to multiply by 2, multiply by 2, for these to cancel out, leaving me with m equals 12. Alright, we're doing great. Alright, on to number 4. Okay, so number 4, notice that one's different than number 3 because the fraction is dividing all of it. The first step is to get rid of that denominator. So because we're dividing by 4, the opposite is to multiply. So we're going to multiply each side by 4. Oops, forgot to change my pen. So times 4 times 4. So the 4's cancel out over here, leaving me with a -7 plus x. But on the other side, we've got 4 times 0. So 4 times 0 still gets us 0. So then our last step to solve for x is to move over that -7. So the inverse operation is to add 7, so +7 on both sides. So I got x equals 7. Alright, doing fine. Let's keep going. Number 5. So number 5 is what you call a proportion. It's when a fraction equals a fraction. So when you have proportions, you cross multiply to solve. So in this problem here, I'm going to take my 2 times 2 and multiply together to get 4. And then I'm going to multiply my 7 times m, which just gives me 7m. So then from here, I've got a one-step equation. So all I need to do is divide by 7. And our answer here, we're going to get m equals 4/7. Or we could say that's 0.571. Either way, you could do it as a fraction, you could do it as a decimal, down for either. Alright, number 6. Number 6 has parentheses, and we know anytime we have parentheses you must distribute so we can start solving. So 5 times 8 gives me 40, and 5 times -6n gives me a -30n. And I'm still left with that equals 280 because that's not in parentheses, so we're not going to multiply that 5 all the way to that 280. So then from here I can go back to my two-step equation steps and move the number first without the variable, and then we can divide. So I want to move that 40. It's a +40, so the inverse would be a -40. So my 40's cancel out, which is what we wanted, so I've got -30n equals, and 280 minus 40 gets me 240. And then our last step here is to divide by -30 to get n by itself. So dividing by -30, we get n equals -8 for our final answer. Alright, so that's just solving equations. Okay, that's kind of all you'll see on the final when it comes to that. But let's refresh our memory on solving inequalities. We practiced graphing them at the beginning of the year, but then we practiced solving them more recently. So we're kind of tying it all in together. So we're going to go for number 7. And I'm going to rewrite it under the little line so I can show my work. Oops. There we go. So negative 15 plus x is greater than negative 31. Okay, so remember the big rule when you're solving inequalities: if you multiply or divide by a negative number, you must flip the sign. Okay, so we'll see if that happens in this case. If not, no worries, we'll see it at some point. Okay, so we want to get x by itself, so that means we got to move that negative 15. So we're going to add 15 on both sides. All right, adding 15 plus 15. So I've got x is greater than negative 31 plus 15 gets me negative 16. Okay, so right now this is what I've got. So all we need to do is graph it next. All right, so to graph it, we're going to start with a circle at the number. But remember, here's a little quick notes on the side. If it's a greater than or a less than, you've got an open circle. But if it has that equal to under it, that means we have a closed circle. Okay, so for this problem, we just have a greater than, so we're going to have an open circle at negative 16. And then we can see that it's pointing towards x, meaning x is bigger than negative 16. So you want your arrow to go over numbers that are bigger than 16. All right, cool. Let's take a look at number 8. Again, for number 8, I'm going to rewrite the problem below so we can show our work. So I've got 152 is less than negative 8x. Okay, so in this problem, I just need to get rid of that negative 8 in front of x, and if that's multiplying, the inverse would be to divide. So we're going to divide by negative 8. But keep in mind what I said, when we divide by a negative number, that means we have to flip the sign. So now I've got 152 divided by negative 8 gives me a negative 19. So now it's saying negative 19 is greater than x. Okay, so that's our answer, but we need to graph that. So again, we'll have an open circle at negative 19. And because it's eating negative 19, I always say the inequality likes to eat the bigger number. So negative 19 is the biggest it can get. So it's going to go towards numbers that are smaller than negative 19, which is like negative 20, negative 22, negative 24. Those are smaller, going further away from 0. All right. Number 9. Okay, number 9 is more of a multi-step problem. So I've got negative 5 plus a over 2, and then I've got is greater than negative 6. Okay, so we got to get rid of that denominator first because it's dividing everything. If it was only dividing the a, then we'd move that 5 first, but because it's under both things, we need to move that. So because it's dividing, we're going to multiply by 2 on both sides. All right, so now I got negative 5 plus a is greater than negative 12. Okay, but I'm not done yet because I got to get rid of that negative 5. So because that's a minus 5, the inverse is a plus 5. So I've got a is greater than negative 7 because negative 12 plus 5 gets me negative 7. So now here's my answer, but I need to graph it on my number line. So I've got an open circle at negative 7. And then it's saying a is greater than negative 7. So we need numbers bigger than negative 7, which is going that way. All right. Got 3 more problems left. Okay, so number 11, I've got negative 1 is greater than or equal to 9 plus m all over 4. So again, because the 4 is under everything, we have to move that first. So I'm going to multiply by 4 on both sides. All right, so these cancel out, leave me with 9 plus m on one side. And on the flip side, I've got negative 4. 4, there we go. So now what we need to do is get rid of that 9. So because it's a positive 9, the inverse would be to subtract 9. So I'm going to pop my answer over here. So let's see. So negative 4 minus 9 gives me a negative 13. So I've got negative 13 is greater than or equal to m. Okay, so now we have to graph that on our number line. So that's our answer. Now let's graph it. So we're going to have a closed circle this time because of that equal to. So closed circle at 13, negative 13. And it's saying negative 13 is greater than m. So it's saying it's the biggest possible answer. So my arrow is going that way. All right, 2 more. Let's look at number 11. All right, number 11, I got 96, or negative 96, excuse me, is greater than negative 6 times 4 minus 2m. Okay, so first things first, you notice that there are parentheses. We got to distribute to get rid of those parentheses, so let's go ahead and do that. So negative 6 times 4 gets me a negative 24, and then negative 6 times 2m gets me a positive 12m. And then I can go ahead and bring down that negative 96 and the greater than sign. So from here, I need to get m by itself by moving everything over using inverse operations, just like I've done with all my other problems. And that's going to start by moving that negative 24. So because it's a negative 24, the opposite is to add 24. So I'm going to add 24 for these to cancel out, leaving me with 12m. And then I've got negative 96 plus 24 gives me a negative 72. And then I'm going to go ahead and divide by 12. So negative 72 divided by 12 gets me a negative 6. So I've got negative 6 is greater than m. So here's our answer, but we need to graph it. So graphing it, we're going to have an open circle at negative 6. And it's saying negative 6 is greater than m. So you want to point towards a number that are smaller than negative 6. Alright, last one here. And this one's got a lot on this one. So let's see, a lot of different parts. So I got negative 144 is greater than negative 6 plus 3 times negative 5 and minus 6. Okay, so we got, like I said, a ton of different parts here, but the first thing I want you to notice is it has parentheses. So we got to get rid of those parentheses first by distributing. So we're going to go 3 times negative 5, giving me a negative 15n, and then 3 times negative 6, giving me a negative 18. I'm going to bring down this negative 6 because it's just chilling. It's not in parentheses, so we're not going to do anything with it just yet. And then I can bring down that negative 144 and the greater than sign. So from here, I want you guys to notice what's on each side. So on one side, we've got a negative 44, and on the other side, we've got a negative 6, a negative 15n, and a negative 18. Well, notice we've got some like terms. So I need to combine negative 6 and negative 18. So when I do that, I get negative 24. So now I've got negative 15n minus 24, and then I can go ahead and bring down that negative 144 and that greater than sign. Alright, so now let's go ahead and solve for n, and we're going to do that by moving that 24 first. So because it's a minus 24, we're going to add 24. Negative 144 plus 24 gives me a negative 120. And then, so it's greater than, we'll bring down that negative 15n. So we're going to divide by negative 15. But notice, because we're dividing by a negative, we have to flip the sign. So negative 120 divided by negative 15 gets me an 8. But I'm going to change that greater than to a less than. And then I've got my n. So here's my answer. And my last step is to just graph it. So we'll have a, let's see, open circle at 8. And it's saying 8 is less than n. So it's saying that n is a bigger number than 8 because the inequality wants to eat the n. So we want to point this line towards numbers that are bigger than 8, which are those ones. So, sweet. So go ahead and attempt the EdSite review. Check your answers as you go. Again, if you get stuck, email me, hey, I can't understand, number 4. I don't know number 5. And I'll definitely help you guys out. So, cool. See ya.